Welcome to another episode of the Midweek podcast for First Baptist Sweetwater, where our goal is to be the first responders of God's love. My name's Jerry Hendricks. I'm in Studio A with my co-host back from Spring Break A, Teak Hamilton. How are you doing today, Teak?
It's windy outside.
I meant to say...
I just blew in.
Well, we all just blew in.
Holy moly.
Might as well blow in before our heads blow up.
Yeah, it's red dirt out there. Like, it's already here.
It's awful. And I've already texted my family because I just go... I was headed to work and I thought, okay, the sky's going to be red before 9 o'clock.
And it was.
And it was dramatically different from the time I left my house on my 4-minute commute to the office and I got here.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It was crazy. So, anyways, it's...
Did you know there was a book written about Sweetwater called Wind?
No.
We do not endorse the book, but there was a book written about Sweetwater by a person who lived here called Wind, but we don't endorse it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I wore my green.
I got my green on. I don't know if you can see the green.
I can. You can see the color of it.
It didn't, when I started out the day, it was sticking up a lot better. Looked layered. I wasn't expecting it to be this cold.
That's true too.
Teague and I have already made some plans for today.
Yep.
And we're talking about changing those plans based on today's weather. This is the conversation we had yesterday.
Yep.
And the first thing I thought of when I looked at my weather app this morning was much worse than we expected.
Yeah.
So,
man,
we'll not be eating outdoors.
No.
So
I'm not sure the picnic tables will be there anymore.
True. Yeah. We keep wondering what all the noise is outside. It's something blowing around.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
it's bad.
But glad you folks have joined us. We are on the 5th week of Lent on this Sunday, and this is our second time to podcast this week.
Right. We had a little technical difficulty. Our problem is our producer is now a virtual producer, which leaves us
Yes.
having to do it, and it doesn't go so well when we do it.
We do miss Kelsey, shout out. And we text her and let her know that, A, we miss our producer, and that we didn't have a podcast. It didn't record for us well. So, but we're back getting at it first thing on a Wednesday morning. And it's a weird day. It's a weird in a lot of ways, but you don't have youth ministry tonight.
Yeah, we don't have youth and children tonight because of spring break. This is, like you said, spring break B. We have 3 schools that attend here, and so one of them was last week, and 2 of the spring breaks are this week, and it usually kind of destroys your numbers. So we just decided not to fight it and take off.
Yeah, we were already talking first thing Monday how quiet everything was in the community. You didn't see many cars on the road.
Yeah, day after rattlesnake roundup, spring break, daylight savings, it's all.
Yeah, so, but we'll look forward to another good Sunday as we get into the Lenten series. We were talking about we've been and this isn't normal that the speaking content that I have on Sunday and write about during the week is not usually the same as what you're doing in student ministry.
Right. We did the lectionary this year during Lent, and I've liked it. I think we're going to do that every year during Lent, but you use lectionary also, and so your Sunday morning conversation matches up the text with our the following Wednesday text.
Right. And so Sunday was one of those cases where you were telling me that y'all had studied it at the Bible study hour.
Right.
Before I spoke over it.
We had studied the Old Testament passage during the Bible study hour, and then you did the New Testament. So the Old Testament was the bronze snake in the wilderness in Numbers, and then you taught on Jesus saying he needed to be lifted up like the snake in the wilderness, so it just fit perfectly. And that's actually the family devotional for this week for the families at home, is the bronze snake. Jesus saying, lift me up. I must be lifted up like the bronze snake. And so it's really cool.
Yeah. So full transparency, we probably should have said ahead of time, we planned that all along.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't. That's not how we roll.
That's true.
We're going to be honest with you. But that one was an interesting passage. And I shared on Sunday that I had, as I came to worship, I text 2 friends that also I know do lectionary text. And I just encouraged them to lift up the snake. And it was really in the tongue-in-cheek reference to rattlesnake roundup here in Sweetwater.
Right. Which, for the record, we don't actually handle snakes at church.
No. Or you and I don't handle them anywhere.
No, that's true. That's true.
I've handled one with a hoe before.
Yeah, but I'm not going to get that close.
It was a long time. I was, I wasn't a mere child, but we were still living on the farm, so I was about 8 or 9 years old.
Yep.
I chopped it up pretty good.
We never, we had them, but I stayed away from them.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting studying that passage again because this week or last week, I guess it was last Monday, was my official anniversary date. That was my first day in the office here 6 years ago, and it was also on a Monday. And so I recall, like, one of the first events that I participated in the community was the rattlesnake parade.
Oh yeah,
or rattlesnake roundup parade. I should say it that way. It's not a parade of rattlesnakes.
No, it's not. It's not.
But right outside on the street next to us. And so we set up and saw that on that Thursday. And then I remember it was the irony of preaching this passage at that time. I probably didn't do that the first year.
Right.
But the second or third year I was here, I know that these passages crossed over. So you're dealing with this passage. But it's found in Numbers
21,
and real interesting. Pretty typical story of the Israelites. They're not happy, and if they're not happy, ain't nobody happy. And in their misery, God sends these snakes, allows these snakes to come into their camp and start biting people, and some people were dying.
You know, when we had the discussion in the Bible study time, it was interesting to ask the question, why do you think the Israelites were complaining? And we always just think of it as the miracle, the miracle of manna, the miracle of quail. And one of the students, and I don't remember which one it was, said, well, after 40 years of eating manna and quail, just that same meal every day for 40 years or for however long they've been in the wilderness, it's no wonder they wanted something different to eat.
Right.
But it is a huge jump to think that they were craving slavery over that.
Right.
But they're just that tendency, because we complain when we have like sandwiches every day for lunch in a week. And we have variety. So you got peanut butter jelly, and then you got ham and cheese and things like that. But they had the same thing over and over again. So it was interesting to hear from their perspective. And it led me to write down in my journal, when the miraculous becomes mundane. And thinking about the things that we take for granted that are miracles that, just 10, 20 years ago, they would have seen that as a miracle. But we just see it as mundane because it's so routine now. And how often do we miss God's work because it's just part of everyday life to us? Yeah,
that's a good word there, because I'm just thinking how we do find those patterns. It's interesting that it's. I guess I would have to confess that I often lead with my appetite.
I know I do.
And maybe it's not just the appetite for food, but the appetite for the things that I enjoy.
Right.
And at that same time, when you have the opportunity to look back, and we talk so much about a spirit of thankfulness, and starting that morning or that discipline routine with thankfulness, it does shed a little different light on that story and ourself.
Right.
In that process.
And then the fact that God didn't take away the snakes. The snakes were still there. Yeah. God provided a remedy for the poison. And then that pointing forward to, God doesn't take away our sinning ability.
Right.
God provides a remedy or redemption for our sin. The opportunity to sin is always there. And the punishment for sin is always there. But we have salvation through Jesus. And so it was really a great discussion, especially building like that, with having the conversation about the Old Testament passage and then you lead the New Testament. It just all built together perfectly.
Yeah. Well, it is fun, but again, it comes back to one of the reasons that we use that instrument of lectionary is that it does keep us into a routine, right, of understanding at key points. Not just at key points in our life, but key points in the season the season that we're in, right, which is the season of Easter. And again, I think it's still worth mentioning that we're in our growing up years, our formative years in faith, Baptists were pretty good. Well, they were good at celebrating Easter,
Right.
but there wasn't much leading up to it or following it that
Right.
had any kind of that holds any place in my memory.
It all hinged on the cantata.
Yeah.
That's what that's what every
Oh,
church
yeah?
did. Every Baptist church has their big program they did, and it was that. After that, it was just kind of that big sigh of, oh, it's over. We can go back to regular church, and that's why there's the drop off from massive attendance on Easter to not so much attendance the day after or the Sunday
Right.
after.
Yeah, in fact, I think we started to notice here in our pattern that's one of our
Yes.
it finds it the Sunday after Easter finds itself in the lowest attended Sundays of the year.
And that's one of the Sundays that we've chosen to do communion on.
Right.
That we don't do it on Easter. We do it on the Sunday after Easter.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting how we've grown in our thoughts and development about this, and I'm also excited about how our church here has developed an appreciation for this rhythm and this sequence.
Right.
Obviously, I think there's for all of us there's more for us to learn as we continue to grow through this. But it's fun to be in a similar conversation, and not just among ourselves, but with many of our friends.
Right.
They're in the same text, and if they're not in the same text that we are, they're in similar places. Just like you were saying, y'all were studying Numbers, and the gospel text referred to that passage in Numbers.
Right.
So I think all those things work together during this process to really help us to carry on that conversation with a lot of folks.
It's fun because we no longer have to be worried or scared of certain words like Lent and Advent and lectionary, that we can actually use those to explore our spirituality and our faith development and use that as a building block for our faith.
Right.
And not be like, oh, that's not our denomination. That's not, well, no, it's Christian. It's something we can use to grow as a follower of Christ.
Right. No one owns it.
Right.
And so, but it's becoming a more significant part of our tradition. Obviously, the COVID year we've had has really, and the ice storm we had,
Ice-mageddon.
has kind of been frustrating, or has frustrated some of our gatherings in regard to some key points of the season. But one of the things that we've been excited about is in terms of us, I say us, and I guess it starts with conversations that you and I have in developing the programming here. But when we were talking about not having Lent or the Lenten lunches or during Holy Week,
Right.
where we really drill down on that emphasis of those last days, we decided to go a different way and really emphasize prayer and fasting.
Mm-hmm.
And this emphasis of prayer has really taken off
Right.
in the life of our church, outside of even our own ideas,
Right.
and that's exciting in and of itself. But so we started doing the noon prayer on Fridays, and we were talking yesterday how much that's meant to us, each of us.
Right. And thankful for the other leadership that has kind of grasped onto that and taken a run with that. We've talked a lot about Heather Cosby. She's the leader of the women's ministry team, and that whole team has really focused in on prayer in so many different ways as a ministry to women and as a part of women's ministry. And so that's exciting that it's not just because you use an illustration that sometimes as a leader you'll be like, here's a great idea, let's go, and you take off and you're like looking behind you to see if anyone's following. But this is one of those things where it has that potential and you're nervous about it, but it's so important and so vital to faith, and it's been great for me, and I know you. Stacy's been able to be here twice, and she's really appreciated it and enjoyed it. But it's great to see other people in the church who are grabbing onto it and seeing how vital prayer is in their lives.
Well, and it was one of those things where you and I knew that it was going to be meaningful for us.
Right.
We were hoping that it would be meaningful for some others.
Right.
And I think it has been.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And the difference in the Lenten season compared to Advent or other parts of the year is that the Lenten season isn't driven by numbers.
Right.
And I think you have, your expectation is, except for the Easter Sunday, your expectations are a lot lower in terms of attendance. But I do think you continue to provide opportunity because it gives a platform for spiritual formation that if a person's not already doing that, this really helps them to understand that and how meaningful it can be and how they can make that a part of their life. So it's, we do evaluate the things that we do pretty regularly, and I think this is something that we're committed to. Because I can remember, I think the second Tenebrae service we had, I remember telling Teak, as we were setting up, I said, if we don't have any more than we did last year, we're not doing this again. And
I'm pretty sure I probably bristled at that.
Well, and then almost immediately after it was over, when I saw you, I go, Teak, I don't care if it's just me and you. We're doing this again. So our whole mindset has shifted.
But even that has grown, and it was slow growing at first because it is so different. I mean, hey, come to a service where we're going to talk about your sin and how you need to confess your sin and how Jesus dies a brutal death on the cross.
Right.
Versus, hey, come celebrate a baby in a manger with jingle bells.
Right.
I mean, it's a totally different invite. And
watch little children running around on stage in the chaos. Yeah,
wassail.
It's different.
Let's do wassail this Tenebrae service. Let's see how that goes.
Well, to wrap this podcast up, it is worth mentioning that we'd really encourage you to take that last week, the Holy Week, and go ahead and mark that on your calendar, and look for ways that you can intentionally, stretch your own spiritual formation.
Right.
From Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. If you could do that, I think it would give you a whole new perspective on some of the events that we talk about, some of the words that we use. And then in particular, that Good Friday, which I know a lot of people have that day off.
Right.
We were talking yesterday how I'm already anticipating the emotion of that day, knowing that I'm going to be in prayer and reflection at noon. Right. And then we're going to lead that service of shadows. Tenebrae is talking about shadows, where you walk out of the worship center that night with it dark, knowing what's about to happen. So you kind of live in that tension for a period of time. So
I'm going to go ahead and go out there and say, if a person comes to the prayer time and to the Tenebrae service and comes in with an open mind, open heart, ready to experience God, they're going to have the most memorable Good Friday they've ever had. I'm jumping out there.
I stand by that. So join us this Sunday at 10:30. Go ahead and mark your calendar for the events and days and readings of Holy Week, and we look forward to being a part of your worship.
See ya.